What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today we're going to be taking a look at yet another super overdue knife for this channel. This is the Benchmade Bugout, specifically the version in the kind of Coyote/OD scales and the Gunmetal Gray DLC. This knife and many others this week and next week and the week after have all actually been provided by my friend David, who has generously basically purchased a whole bunch of knives for me to review, and it should be really interesting. So thank you again, David, for doing that. If you are new to this channel, what I like to do is simple laid-back knife talk, overviews and reviews, generally in a tabletop setting, but I do a few things out of my car for whatever reason. It just kind of depends on what I'm doing that day. So anyways, if you like the idea of that and you like the idea of 4 to 5 videos a week, regular content uploads, then you might really enjoy this channel. So if that's the case, go ahead and like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram at metal_complex. Anyways, let's take a look at this very, very interesting knife. Real quick, let's do some measurements here so that everybody kind of gets a gauge for what we're working with. This knife has an overall length of about 7.5 inches, almost on the dot. Blade length, we'll move her over here. Blade length looks to be about 3 1/4, but about 3 1/8 on the cutting edge. So you could argue that it's a little more than 3 inches, honestly, is what it looks like from my light. But maybe I don't know how to use a tape measure. I don't know. I remember the website saying it was 3 inches on blade length, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons here real quick. Here it is compared to the Ontario Rat Model 1. So you can see there that this knife is not a large knife, but I would call it right on the line for a full-size knife. And the Rat's 8.6 inches, by the way. The reason is because this is a 7.5 inch knife that I can get my entire hand around. That's my own personal gauge for that. How about against the Spyderco Shaman? Spyderco Shaman coming in at 8 1/4 inches. How about the Manix 2? Manix 2 coming in at 8 inches. And a couple of previews for the channel here. How about the Benchmade Griptilian? Now, I have talked about the Benchmade Griptilian before on my channel, but this is a special one. This is actually the DLT exclusive carbon fiber and M390 Griptilian. Griptilian coming in at 8 inches, or just shy of 8 inches. How about the Benchmade 940? I think that's a great size comparison for this knife. 940 coming in at, I want to say it's about 7.75 inches overall. Right there in the same kind of profile and size range. And finally, the Delica, which I honestly believe is the true competitor with this knife. Very similar in price, very similar in size and weight. I will actually be pitting these two knives against each other in a head-to-head battle, as well as doing a review for everything that you just saw on the table that you haven't seen on my channel so far. Will get its own review. Some of them will get battles too. Anyways, moving on here. This is a very interesting knife, and I want to go over the anatomy here real quick. We have what I consider to be probably the most functional, usable drop point blade shape that exists, and that's partly because of this high grind here and the starting stock thickness of 0.09. Very thin stock and very slicey behind the edge. I was going to save this for a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and do the paper slice test just so I can give you an example here of how well that thing slices. It is very, very thin behind the edge there. So you have Benchmade's typical toothy edge, and if you get the the version of this with this DLC coating, you're going to have a little bit of resistance there just because that DLC coating is a little bit chalky. But the standard version, which comes as a satin finish and no DLC coating, is not going to have that same exact type of resistance. Now, speaking of the two versions, there is the this version here, which runs about $135, something like that. And then you have the standard, which is the satin blade, the blue standoffs, the blue scales, or not standoffs, the thumb studs are blue. Actually, does it have blue standoffs? It probably does. That version comes at $118, $119, which I think honestly is a little bit more fair price for this. This, at $136, this version here is approaching the Manix 2, the PM2, and I don't know if I'm going to put it quite in the same appropriate price range. Not talking about capability, just in terms of what you're paying for, the materials you're getting. This one's a little bit high for my taste. So anyways, let's talk about anatomy here. You have this amazing blade, which we covered here. You've got a nice, reasonably sized Torx head pivot. Itty bitty, teeny tiny little Torx head screws that are really going to frustrate people, and you're going to strip, you know, the screw in your tool, and that it stinks. But if you're really careful, you can get your tool in there. You of course have the axis lock, which on this version it has been blackened. You've got a little bit of texturing here, which actually is kind of aesthetically pleasing, and it does provide a little bit of traction there, so that's nice. You've got your lanyard hole down here, which is nice and large. Anybody who likes to carry a lanyard or use a lanyard is going to be really happy with that. You have a right or left hand positionable pocket clip that is deep carry, so that's nice. Given the fact that this is an axis lock, it is truly ambidextrous, so that's also nice. This is going to be a tip up only carry situation, so for those of you who prefer tip down, I'm sorry, that's just the way that this knife is. You have an open body construction with 2 standoffs back here and then more screws on the other side. Unbelievably lightweight. That is the one stat we haven't talked about there. Extremely lightweight, 1.8 ounces on this guy, which I think is what has made this knife so famous. This is making big waves in the knife world right now. As far, you know, if you are a minimalist who really likes the idea of getting the most out of your tool and it weighing as little as possible, well, this is the knife, you know. And for good reason. It weighs 1.8 ounces. Now this is because not only do you have ultra thin materials, but you also have, you see this screw right here in the middle. If we can focus. Let's focus. This screw right here in the middle, this one right here, is actually holding the tip of a cartridge liner. So the metal inside this knife, the liner is only in this area right here on both sides. On the inside there, which we may not be able to catch, this whole section from here back is just hollowed out FRN. So metal only comes down it's about a 40% cartridge liner, whereas compared to the cartridge liner on the Benchmade Griptilian, you're going to have about a 75% cartridge liner that comes to about right here. So it's the same type of deal there, but with the liner being both countersunk and only extending 40% the body of the knife from the pivot, what you end up with is an incredibly lightweight knife. Now, we're going to talk more about that, but that's essentially why you get that weight. I also want to talk about the fit and finish on this knife overall. When I saw this knife, I know their videos, and I saw it, the specs on websites, I thought, that thing is so tiny and thin and frail sounding. There is no way that it's going to come centered, and there's no way that it's going to come without blade play. But I was wrong. This knife came perfectly centered, and to my absolute surprise, rock solid lock. I mean, seriously, rock solid. I mean, if you've never handled this, you might be in the same, you know, boat as me in terms of thinking that this type of knife would be very, you know, rattly and frail and it would just have blade play. It doesn't have any blade play. I'm very impressed with that. It makes me trust this knife a lot more because I kind of have a personal bias against FRN. We'll talk more about that too. Ergonomically, it has a very simple design in the handle, and it works. How this is swept backwards right here to keep your thumb or your finger from running up on the blade is just great. They kind of have the same thing back here. If you have medium, large size hands, your hand's gonna come all the way around it. So, you know, anywhere from small up to medium, large size hands are gonna be very comfortable in this knife. It's only if you have very, very large hands do you start approaching the area where you might have an issue with it. Overall, though, the ergonomics, I would say, are excellent. The position of where your hands fall naturally, as far as where your fingers wrap around, they do contact that texturing just fine. There is some jimping up here, and I'll say this. The jimping is traditional Benchmade style, where it's on the frame and not as much on the blade. I would have preferred, if they were going to do that, I really wish they would have done it just like the Benchmade Griptilian, where you've got jimping up on top. Not necessarily a ramp, but just jimping up here. I feel like this is where my finger wants to go, and I kind of want to put my thumb up there. Though I wouldn't really call this, a hard, I'm going to tiptoe into saying this. I wouldn't call this a hard use knife. Maybe the thought process was this isn't the type of knife that you're going to really bear down on while cutting, so maybe you don't need jimping up there. I don't know. I'm not really sure what the philosophy was there. It doesn't really matter. The knife is very comfortable to hold and I use and things like that. I did carry this knife a little bit over the last couple of days, and I will say while you're carrying it, it literally disappears in your pocket. I actually forgot that I was carrying it. That's the crazy thing, which actually puts it at risk to go through the washing machine. Probably won't have. You're probably going to be conscious that there's a $135 pocket knife in your pocket. But I've washed knives before, so I just want to throw that out there. You will literally forget that this knife is in your pocket. What I found that I really like is this teeny tiny little pocket clip. It's very, very minimalist in design, and it just sort of disappears in your pants, and it doesn't show much on the outside. You know, if you've got a short, if you like the idea of your shirt sort of covering up your pocket clip, this short pocket clip will be almost completely concealed by your shirt. Plus, it's designed with that little divot that I like. It does have the screws that stick up under here, so you might have to fight it a little bit on your pants pocket, depending on how thick the seam of your pocket is. But it's not bad. And this works. I mean, this is all the more knife I really have to grab onto when I'm pulling it out. Would I say that it's better than a clip that rides down here? I'm going to use the Benchmade Griptilians clip again. Would I say it's better than that? No, I wouldn't say that it's better. I wouldn't say that it's worse either. It's just shorter. That's really all there is to say about it. But it works. It's great. I did enjoy carrying this. It does feel like a knife that I could simply pull out and use for a number of different things. The amount of blade that you get for how little the knife is or how light the knife is awesome. The thumb stud is in a great position compared to the pivot, and just where you're going to generate the force required to fire the blade out. It's in a great place. This one hasn't quite broken in yet, but it has that feeling of phosphor bronze having friction on the blade, not like a grindy feeling, but just how phosphor bronze sort of breaks in over time. The same thing that you feel with the 940 and the Griptilian when you first buy one. I have no doubt that this thing is going to get very smooth over time. It does still feel smooth on the deployment, whether I'm firing it out slowly or firing it out quickly. And I imagine, let's see if I can do it. Well, actually a reverse flick is kind of hard there because of where you have to get your finger. You got to get your finger right underneath there. Maybe if I use the meat of my finger here. Where's Ricky when I need him? Ricky, you are way better at doing that than me. So maybe I need you in these reviews to demonstrate the reverse flick on any particular knife. But anyways, you might be better at that than me. It's plenty easy to deploy, and it's, it feels good on deployment right now. Jeez, I failed twice on the regular one. Not my... Sorry about that. I had to stop the video again. Anyways, let's talk about the carry philosophy in this knife, because this is, a funny area with this knife. The reason that this knife is, making waves and getting so much attention is because of how much blade you're getting for how much it weighs. And, given the name Bugout, I think ideally with this knife, if somebody were packing a lot of stuff, let's say you were going camping or you were doing anything that required you to carry a pack with lots and lots of things, where every ounce that you're carrying matters because it all adds up. So you're trying to maximize the utility of every object that you have to bring with you while minimizing the weight at the same time. I think in that scenario, the Bugout is literally perfect. I honestly can't think of a knife that's better suited than the Bugout for that situation, because you are getting a 3 1/8 inch blade on a 1.8 ounce frame that's 7.5 inches long. I think those ratios are pretty much king right now. Now, for EDC, if you are the type of person who just simply prefers the lightest possible cutting tool and you are doing very basic and very simple cutting tasks throughout the day, you're opening packages, you're breaking down cardboard boxes, you're opening letters, you're opening little, bags of pretzels or whatever. I know I use that example a lot, but light EDC tasks, yes, I think this knife would work fine. I think that's perfect for that, in fact, if you're the person who prefers a light weight knife. If you demand anything more out of your knife, if you know that sometimes you're going to be doing heavy pressure cuts, sometimes you're going to be cutting deep into things, and you might be creating, not necessarily prying, but you're going to put a little bit of torque on the blade. Maybe you're doing like heavy wood cutting. Then in that situation, no, I don't think so. I think it's worth actually carrying a knife that weighs a few more ounces, something like this, or the bench. I think in that situation, you're actually going to need a bigger knife. And I want to stress that, for a lot of people, for people who are going to be doing light things, maybe weight is the number one priority. But it is not a universally top spec to consider. The lighter the knife does not automatically make it better. If a knife comes out that's 1.5 ounces and it's the same size, that does not make it, not only better than the Bugout, it also doesn't make it like the best knife that's available. Sometimes, a little extra heft is a small sacrifice to gain some sort of benefit in toughness. And truthfully, again, I got to point this out. I point this out all the time. If the only thing that you're carrying on a day-to-day basis is a pocket knife, you are not going to notice the difference between 2 ounces and 4.5 ounces. I think once you start to climb above 4.5 ounces, depending on the types of pants that you wear, most people wear jeans and khakis and, not super heavy duty, but regular pants throughout the day. If you're a jeans guy, if you're a common jeans guy, which I am, you're not going to notice the difference between the Bugout and the Benchmade Griptilian. Eventually, at some point, you're going to forget both of them are there. If you're the type of person who wears athletic shorts every day, then maybe the Bugout really is the best choice for you, because that's gonna flop around. You're not gonna want to carry a Medford Praetorian every day if you are in athletic shorts. Then again, I'm not convinced that anybody should really be carrying a Medford Praetorian as an EDC anyway. Now sorry, I don't want to make any Medford fans mad. I actually really like the Medford Praetorian and a lot of the Medford line anyway. Just because they're aesthetically pleasing to me. But I'm getting off track here. I hope that what I'm saying is making sense. Don't choose this knife just because it's ultra lightweight and you want to, maybe you feel like if you buy it, you'll be a part of this elitist minimalist group that's like, you don't need to get anything over a certain weight, and the lighter the better. But don't do that. Choose the knife that fits your needs and is a reasonable, comfortable carry weight for you. For me, truthfully, I like a little bit of heft. 4.5 to 6 ounces, that's kind of my sweet spot. I enjoy that area. And I enjoy the 7 and 3/4 to 8 1/4 range, which is why I love the Mannix so much. It falls perfectly in there. That's just me. That's what I enjoy. So, but truthfully, this knife is going to make an excellent EDC and will meet the demands of most people in terms of their EDC needs, throughout the day. So that's kind of how I feel about that. Now, I want to talk about the one thing that bothers me. I think that this knife is perfectly executed. I think the design is great. The blade shape is great. The material is great. By the way, this is CPM S30V. I haven't mentioned that yet. And CPM S30V, though, it is kind of a boring steel, and you see it on everything right now. It's one of the only steels that was made specifically for cutting tools, for pocket knives. So CPM S30V is plenty capable. It's got high chromium, so it's very stainless, and it holds a really good edge for a long time, and it's reasonably tough. It's very well rounded. So again, execution and design is great. This is a great knife. What I don't like, one thing, I don't like how cheap that feels. That sounds awful to me, and the feeling locking out and closing, I can feel that hollowness every single time that I do that. And this is what I was talking about earlier, is my personal bias against FRN and plastic scales. For the amount of money that I'm paying, that coupled with how it feels and how it sounds, I hate it. I'm okay with it on the Rat. For those of you who don't know, this isn't G10. The Rat 1 uses FRN. Now it feels a little more solid because it's got full steel liners that come all the way out to the outside. The Bugout has a small cartridge liner, and the rest of the scale is hollowed out plastic, so it feels really cheap. I mean, really, really cheap in a very displeasing way. That's me. That's just my opinion on it. This is not, truthfully, this is not a knife that I will ever carry for that reason. I can't do it. Now, if this had solid G10 scales and you know, they don't even really need to extend that liner, but the solid G10 scales would at least keep that hollowed out reverberation sound from happening when you flip it out. And ideally, you know, there was a long time where I considered saying, I'm just going to buy one of these and buy some aftermarket titanium scales, you know, because even then with the titanium scales, I think it still is under 3 ounces, which makes it, you know, I don't really care. But for most people, I think that's still going to be great. And honestly, I think it might benefit from a little more weight because here is, sorry about that, had to stop the video again. Here's the deal. It might benefit from a little more weight because here's where you're balanced. It's blade heavy. Sorry, I'm trying to do this at an angle. It wants to tip forward a little bit. Just a little bit. So I think balancing or pulling a little bit of weight back towards the scales, and it's very slight, guys, like ultra slight. And that's a nitpicky thing because truthfully, the balance on this knife matters way less considering how light it actually is. On a knife that weighs, 5 ounces, if you've got heavy blade weight or heavy butt weight on the knife, the weight's going to be a lot more apparent, but if it were balanced, that 5 ounces would feel more like 4 ounces. On a knife that weighs 1.8 ounces like this, it really doesn't matter, so that's very nitpicky. That's really my only complaint about this knife are how cheap the scales feel. If I'm going to pay over $100 for a knife, I really hate that feeling. I want it to feel, it doesn't matter, it's not about the lightweightness. Heft inexplicably for me does actually create a sense of quality. But if I try to shove that out of my mind, it's really the solidity, the feeling of structural integrity in the knife that gives me this feeling of confidence in it. And unfortunately, the handles are just, they're so hollow and cheap feeling that I don't get that experience with this knife, and that's what bothers me. The other problem is that if we put G10 on this knife, we are in the same price range as the 940 with G10, and this is a $170 knife, which a lot of people know already is it's kind of viewed as a little bit ridiculous on the 940. When you can get a paramilitary 2 with G10 and S30V for $135 and you can get the Manix for $115 and it's the same thing, it's like, well, where's the money going? So anyways, my point is that if Benchmade started putting G10 on this, we would inevitably see a price of $160, $170 on it, possibly more if it's really popular. I don't know. As much as I would love to see this knife in CPM 20CV and carbon fiber, I think the price on it would be so ridiculous that it wouldn't sell very well. The 940 that's got S90V and carbon fiber, I think Benchmade still wants $265, $270 for that, and that is kind of outrageous. As amazing a knife as that would be, it would probably yield an outrageous price. So I don't know. It's like, I'd love to see it, but I don't know if I really want to see it. I'm torn there. So my final conclusion on this knife is, honestly, yes, I can absolutely recommend this knife. This knife makes an excellent EDC. It is very well designed. It's going to serve the needs of most people on a day-to-day basis, and the blue one is priced fairly. It's not the most amazing thing in the whole world, but it is priced fairly. If all of them come with the same fit and finish that this one came with, which I'm hopeful for, but not 100% confident, so yours may vary. I would still go into a shop if you can and handle multiple of the same model and choose the one that you think feels right to you. But if they're all like that, then this is excellent. If you are out to find the lightest knife, the best blade to weight ratio that's out there, and you are going to be doing light cutting tasks throughout the day, then this is probably the knife for you. If you're not bothered by the cheap hollow feeling of FRN, then this is probably the knife for you. If you're on the fence about this and you have been carrying knives like the Manix, the Benchmade Griptilian, the Paramilitary 2, maybe the Shaman, and you're not really sure if a hollowed out FRN would be right for you, you're probably going to be like me and you're not going to like that cheap feeling. That's really going to leave you with a sour taste in your mouth. But to fans of the Benchmade Bugout, if you own this knife and you love this knife and it's your EDC, you should keep loving it. You know, you do not have to, you know, I'm not saying that you should change your mind because I don't like that it's cheap. I do think it's an excellent knife, and I think for those people that you guys probably did make the right choice for you. So it's gonna be a great knife for some people and not the best knife for other people. That's honestly what I think there. So this is gonna go in my playlist of my most top recommended EDC knives. I just made that playlist the other day, or actually yesterday. I think there's close to 30 videos in there of all the knives that I've shown on my channel that I can honestly recommend as some of the best EDC knives that are out there. And this will absolutely go in that playlist. I definitely can recommend this knife. Anyways, you know, that's pretty much it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. And if you'd like to check out my other content, like I said, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there is definitely more coming. In fact, there is a lot coming. We have this entire massive box of knives that we just unboxed here. If you want to check that video out, you can. All of that, plus head-to-head stuff, plus some other old school switchblades that I still have not done yet. And then we have 2 customs coming next week or possibly the week after, plus some other stuff that we are kind of circling right now, considering purchasing. So if all of that sounds great to you, go ahead and subscribe because this is going to be really fun, all the content that's coming. But anyways, thanks again for watching, guys, and have a great day.